So you've decided that you want to get locks, but there are so many different types of locks out there to choose from. You have sister locks, micro locks, traditional locks, freeform locks, two-strand twist to locks, braid locks, the list goes on. So in this video, I am going to talk about 4 of the most popular types of locks. I'm going to share the pros and the cons and my personal experience with them. Hi friends, if you're new around here, I'm Latoya and welcome to my channel. I have been locked since 2013, and on this channel I talk about my Sisterlocks journey, my travels, and just being the best version of myself and yourself. So if you're interested in any of that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. To begin, I just want to say that one locking style or method of locking your hair isn't better than the other. They are just different. Each lock style has its own characteristics, its own look. The maintenance schedule is going to be different. So just depending on who you are and your lifestyle, you may gravitate towards one or the other. That doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means that it's better for you, which is what we want. Dreadlocks, or locks as some people call it because they have a problem with the word dread. I do not, so I call it both. Dreadlocks are a natural hairstyle that have been worn across civilizations and cultures. For me, I wear my locks for so many different reasons, like the convenience of it. I love the aesthetics of it, the look of it. But it's also because I want to show my pride in my African roots and my Blackness. Not every person of color who wears locks is necessarily wearing it for those cultural reasons, and that is okay. So let's get into 4 of the many ways that you can lock your hair. First up is Sisterlocks. This is what I have. Sisterlocks are generally the smallest locks of all the lock types, with the diameter of the locks being 2 to 3 millimeters, so very, very thin. This locking technique was developed by Joanne Cornwell in the US, and it is a proprietary locking system, which I now have some mixed feelings about. I don't want to get too much into my feelings about the Sisterlocks organization, other than to say that I feel like their expectations for consultants or people that have Sisterlocks are really high, which can be a good thing. But I feel like their delivery of what they're supposed to do is quite low. It's subpar. So they tell you can only use, the Sisterlocks retightening tool, but then as a consultant, you can only get so many of those tools per year. So if you lose them, you talk about using their products, but then it takes months to get their products, especially if you're outside of the US, and not even looking at the cost of shampoo. It's absurd. Saying all of that, do I regret getting Sisterlocks? No. Would I do things differently if I were starting over today with the knowledge that I have? Probably. There is a lot to love about Sisterlocks. Basically, there's unlimited styling potential. I can do updos, braids, twists. I can flat iron my hair if I want to, which I've never done, but I've seen people do. On top of that, because my hair is so thin, the locks are very lightweight and it puts very little tension on my scalp. I chose Sisterlocks because of the neat, uniform look of them and the unlimited styling potential. On the flip side, Sisterlocks are the most expensive of all the lock types. So Sisterlocks in Toronto, all the prices I'm going to mention in this video are Toronto prices because that's what I know. So in Toronto, Sisterlocks start from about $650 or more. That's like really low, probably someone who's just starting out, all the way up to $2,000 to install Sisterlocks. Maintenance can also be a bit pricey. You're looking at $120 or $30 all the way up to $200 per retightening, which is done every 6 to 8 weeks. I paid $800 11 years ago. Installation is very time consuming because these consultants are installing on a very neat grid and they are typically installing 400 or more Sisterlocks. I have over 600, It takes a lot of time, so again, that's reflected in the price. My installation took 24 straight hours. Microlocks are pretty much what they sound like, really tiny locks. Just like Sisterlocks, the diameter of Microlocks is about 2 to 3 millimeters. When I first started doing research into locks 11 years ago, the difference between Sisterlocks and Microlocks was a lot clearer back then. Microlocks were not being done on grids. We were not using very similar tools. But in the last few years, I've realized that it's pretty hard to tell the difference between Sisterlocks and Microlocks in so many cases. Whether you like it or not, the girlies have cracked the code. Microlocks can be started by anyone, including yourself. So if you are good with hair, this might be something that you can do on your own, or you can find a loctician. You can install Microlocks through various methods, including interlocking, which is similar to Sisterlocks, braiding or twisting. It's very flexible, so you could pay $0 and do it yourself, or have someone close to you do it, or you can go to a loctician and pay them like I mentioned. If you go to a loctician, the prices I'm seeing right now in Toronto are starting at about $500 to install Microlocks. So Microlocks are generally cheaper than Sisterlocks, but you have all of the same benefits. You have the thin size locks that are flexible for styling and that are not heavy. Because there's less control about who can start Microlocks, you really do have to do your research. If you're gonna go to a loctician, make sure that the work they've done in the past is work that you like. Make sure that you're very clear on what kind of Microlocks you want. Do you want a grid or not? You have that option. What method do you want to start your Microlocks if you have a preferred method? So you really have to kind of do your research ahead of time when you're going, because there isn't like a standard. And if you're doing it yourself, I would just say do your research ahead of time. For some reason, I've seen quite a few people who start their Microlocks and then they like pull them out or cut them off, and they're doing their second set or third set. And if that's something you're into, then hey, go for it. Personally, I just want to do this one time and leave it. So I would say if that's also something that you want, then just make sure you're doing all your research up front, you know what you're getting into. So if I were starting all over again, I would choose Microlocks over Sisterlocks. Because of the flexibility, I could go to any loctician to retighten my hair. I don't have to go to a Sisterlocks consultant. So that flexibility, especially when I'm traveling, the lower price, and I just don't see enough benefit from having Sisterlocks over Microlocks to say that I would do Sisterlocks again. Traditional locks are probably the most widely known locks out there. In terms of sizing, they are typically 5 to 14 millimeters in size, or what I call medium to large size locks. Traditional locks are the OG of locks. All of my family in Jamaica with locks have traditional locks, and most of my family here in Toronto have traditional locks as well. They call my locks designer locks, which I don't mind, but I would say a lot of people have traditional locks, especially those who started their hair 10 or more years ago when these other methods just weren't as popular. Like Microlocks, you can start your traditional locks yourself or go to a loctician, and they typically use palm rolling, comb coil or finger coils in order to start them. And because they're much bigger than Microlocks or Sisterlocks, the price is way more affordable. I've been seeing prices in Toronto at about $150 to start your traditional lock. Styling options are more limited with traditional locks because of their size. So you'll want to think about that. Are you someone that likes to style your hair often or not? Maybe you like to wear your hair just down like me, kind of. The other thing is, because the locks are heavier, you want to be careful with tension on your hair, on your scalp, because that could lead to hair loss. The other thing is that typically with traditional locks, they use beeswax or gel in order to form or mat the locks. So you'll want to think about that. Freeform locks are formed naturally without any manipulation from you or a stylist. They typically are 5 to 14 millimeters in size, although you have no control over what the sizing is of freeform locks because they form on their own. Your only job is to not comb your hair and to leave it alone. By letting your hair mat and knot on its own, then naturally you're going to end up with locks of varying sizes and shapes, and that's one of the main characteristics of this style of locking. Some of the benefits of freeform locks are there is no maintenance. So you don't have to go sit in a loctician's chair for any amount of hours. There is zero cost because, again, you do not have to pay anything for your freeform locks. You just let it do its thing. On the flip side, you have no control whatsoever on the final look of your locks, the sizing. So while this will work for some people, it's not going to work for others who want to have control over the process or control over what the final look of their hair will be like. This style would also maybe be difficult for people who are working in conservative spaces because your hair is going to look unconventional, I would say, in a lot of these spaces. So you'll have to be ready to handle any repercussions that could come about as a result of that. People sometimes ask me about that, my locks, like, aren't you afraid that it will keep opportunities from you, keep yourself from being promoted, that type of thing? And my answer is like always the same. Whatever hair I choose to have on my head, whatever style I choose, if that means I'm gonna be excluded from certain places because they don't like how my hair naturally grows out of my head or how I've chosen to style that hair as it naturally comes out of my head, then that's a place that I don't want to work anyway. So it's up to you to decide what matters to you. So those are 4 popular lock types. There are so many others out there, but I really wanted to help you narrow it down by choosing 4 of the most popular ones. So I hope this list, including all the pros and cons, have helped you make a decision. Let me know if you have any comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more, and check out my Sisterlocks playlist. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next one. Peace.